Welcome to the first Taang Docu Industry Session, Sundance Filmmaking in the Time of COVID. On behalf of the Filipino Documentary Society, or PhilDocs, I'm Monster Jimenez. I'm with my fellow festival directors, Baby Ruth, Cara, and Jewel, along with the rest of the team. We're lucky to have three Sundance programmers with us today. Allow me to introduce them. There's Ania Trzebiatowska, in the Sales and Acquisitions Executive for the documentary sales agency, Outlook Film Sales. Prior to that, she was with the NYC-based agency, Visit Films, where she served as Senior Director of Acquisition since 2015. Ania is also the Artistic Director of Off-Camera IFF in Poland, which she has been programming since 2008. And then we have Sudeep Sharma, who has handled programming at many festivals, including the Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles, Palm Springs International Short Fest, Aspen Shorts Fest, LA Film Festival, AFI Fest, Tribeca, Indian Kaleidoscope Film Festival, among others. He was also the director of public programming for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science. And then, of course, we have Stephanie Owens, who is a filmmaker based in LA. She has programmed with Palm Springs Short Fest, Sundance, and LA Film Festival. She has also contributed to POV and to other festival and funding juries. Maybe we can start with Anya and tell us more about Sundance and what's going on today.
When you were talking about how, how it's very, very difficult, obviously, to even work and focus on being creative and on putting out work that's meaningful to you and to other people. It's, to us, this is just the best thing that you could be doing for the world, in the way that we view it, and also how grateful we are for what you are doing as filmmakers and artists. It's the reason why everything kind of makes sense in terms of the plans that we're putting together right now for the festival. It's kind of complicated right now for us to be planning an event that we have to reshape completely. This festival has been happening for a long time in a very specific form in a very specific place in the world, and now everything about that changed, including the way that we kind of have to navigate our relationships with filmmakers too, because we're trying to figure out what we can offer you, as not just a virtual screening, but also have that kind of connection that we love festivals for the most. And as you know yourselves, because you're doing it yourselves too, it's the community that we love the most when it comes to filmmaking, and we love supporting voices that we feel should be heard, and having filmmakers come to Park City and experience, screening their films with an audience that's completely different.
For now, maybe we could hear from the three, Anya, and Stephanie and Sudeep, about the things you've learned, maybe a bit.
I mean, I can start just by saying that we should have done this a long time ago. No, I mean,
Yeah.
we should just not just do it once, but also keep doing it, because it's so interesting to even see you in one space like this. This is so cool.
Can there be two Filipino docs in Sundance at the same time?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, I think
that's it.
There's a reality that in our international section we have we only have 12 slots, and it's like U.S. international. International is the world outside the United States, so it's not fair in a way, and there's just the reality that we are not able to play films from everywhere. So therefore, if we have 12 slots, if we're playing 2 films from any given place, is that like fair to everyone else? But that's just that's a programming thing where we have to consider. But you look at the lineup, there are so many examples of the festival playing 2 films from a country in the international competition, narrative and documentary, and I know there was, in the narrative section, there was a couple years ago, we played 3 Chilean films in the competition of 12 films. So like it totally happens, and it isn't, but I think it's more about the 3 out of 12. It's more about the films, you know. I think that's like, and it's we're very lucky, and we are considering so many films from so many places that it's just very competitive, you know. Like, and I think it's I know from the outside and just hearing that, it sounds like, oh yeah, well they clearly are doing that, but like it's not. We actually, the way we program and talk about it, we are very rigorous in terms of individual films, and we're thinking about what they are, and we are thinking of them in context of each other, but we don't, like, I don't but I don't think we don't pit them against each other. I just feel like that's never a very productive thing, you know. Like, it's not, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for the better program. It's like, just because this film's about topics too, I think is the similar type of thing. Just like, oh, we have so many films about global warming, so we can't play this film about global warming. You know, like, it doesn't it's like, it just, you could take that logic to some extreme that does not work, you know.
And Stephanie, any observations? And maybe you could also answer the next question, which is having a wider scope of the film industry worldwide and the shift to online festivals. Have you had observations and realizations about this shift? Has it changed your programming decision?
I feel like our breakout focused a lot on the disruption that's going on because of COVID to everyone's work. Not everyone is working on like feature-length documentaries. We have different forms of media happening, but everyone seems to be disrupted, except for if you're in post, which a couple people expressed being able to actually hunker down and get editing done, which I actually can also relate to, having edited a short film and several months ago because of COVID. So I understand that. With the shift to online festivals, like Ania was talking about at the beginning, we are trying to figure out, how do you build community when you have these online gatherings, and when you have to contend with everyone's schedules. Like how do you create a festival experience where everyone is, you know, when you're going in person, you're all forced to be in one place, so your whole life is just watching films, but when you're at home, you know, you have other stuff to do. So what's the best way to show films in that environment? Like, what's the window? Like, do you allow people to watch films all day? Do you make it just a short time? So these are some of the questions that I think we're dealing with this like shift to online festivals, which is why I think we'd love to hear about what you all would be interested in, because we want filmmakers and audiences to feel part of this community, part of a community, which is kind of hard to do when you're dealing with online.
Is there anybody who's shooting now in the gallery? And maybe you could volunteer your experience while you're shooting these days.
I produce documentaries for a broadcasting network, which is altogether different from independent filmmaking. But I think the common thing that we share is that we love to tell stories. And we have to tell stories during the lockdown or during the pandemic, which is a driving force for me. That's why I accepted a lot of projects. I'm in my fourth 1-hour documentary this month. It's been so crazy. When the channel contacted me in March to do a story, I was telling them, "Are you crazy? Why are you filming during this time? Nobody wants to go out." And then they told me that their reach, their ratings have actually shot through the roof, and it's an opportunity we have been, it's a scenario we have been wanting to happen in many years. But now people are home, people are watching, and they're hungry for stories, and that's a reason for continuing to film, especially when you have the opportunity. I had to adjust my standards. It's mostly talking head, B-roll, wallpaper, but Zoom interviews, which are not technically pleasing, or something that we wouldn't want to do because it's ugly. The sound quality is ugly. The HD specs are not there, but we have to readjust our standard It cannot be pre-COVID standards anymore. The heart of your story should be there though. So what can you adjust so that you can deliver the message that you need to deliver? We cannot live in fear for far too long. We need to be brave. Although of course I'm not saying I am brave. I did have mental anxieties. I want to leave this with a hope, with a sense of hope and encouragement for everyone, because this is the time when we should tell stories. This is the time. It's just a matter of logistics planning and rethinking. And if you have the opportunities, jump on it. You know, um, our lives should not be put on hold.
Well, it actually just goes to show that even the techniques in storytelling actually affects the story.
It's just really good to hear, what you're going through. I mean, basically, it's one of those things that I guess, people's experiences here and in Europe and the places will be very similar to an extent, but they're also so very specific to your current location, and also the rules in terms of funding and production and all of that. We have production here being shut down after a day or two of trying to film.
Are there plans to have focus on Southeast Asia?
We don't actually do focuses at the festival. Like, we don't have themed strands as some festivals do. And it's so that will be difficult to do in that way. I mean, I guess, the only way would be through funding, like you're saying, and that is something that's being discussed, and it happens. I mean, I don't know. Does anyone, Sudeep, Stephanie, do you guys want to?
Well, I think it might be worthwhile just to mention too, like the labs are kind of what the Sundance Institute is really known for, and those are the directing labs, the screenwriting labs where people are selected. There's documentary lab where people submit. They're selected like twice a year to go to Utah for a 3-week period to work with collaborators, to work on their projects, and to become more developed filmmakers, right? And like the labs are the festival too is nonprofit, but the labs don't cost anything. You have to be selected for it, and they are separate from the programming side in terms of in terms of us at the festival. When we program the festival, we obviously know about those projects, but we don't necessarily pick all of them to be in the festival, right? Because we have different goals. And the reason I'm saying all that is that some of the work that the labs do in terms of developing filmmakers and that kind of work, they do partner and they go around the world and have regionally focused labs where they'll have for a long time there's been a middle one in Jordan that was happening. There have been different ones in I think South America, and I know for Asia has been a big focus that has come through in one of the labs they've done, but I know the institute side is wanting to do this more. And for us on the festival side is a little bit more difficult because like I was saying before, we are picking films, and we aren't necessarily we have not historically had a focus on a country or Southeast Asia or something like that.
I guess a lot of the questions are really coming from the fact that we are having a hard time getting in Sundance.
Yeah.
There are very few Filipino films. So I think maybe let's get to that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the films that are being passed, and we'd like to hear from you. Some feedback.
Are people applying? Do they feel empowered to apply to Sundance? That's just one question. I'm curious. Is like what your perception of Sundance is. Do you feel like, oh, I can apply with my film might get in, or do you feel discouraged to even apply?
So for those of you who know me, I'm actually Filipino American, and I think my particular interest in Sundance comes from the latter part, the fact that I'm American. Sundance, actually, to all our panelists, it'd be great to go through this identity exploration with you, because we're also trying to figure out what exactly Sundance is, and I think it is shifting. I think as you mentioned, it has been quite market driven over the years, which is really good, you know. And that's and but that informs how that trickles down to the filmmakers and informs our festival strategy then. But not too many of my peers here are doing that. They're like, oh, good luck to you. You'd be someone told me that I'd be like, if I got into the screenwriters lab, I'd be like the first Filipino to do so. But I knew someone else years back who did, Sharon Dayok. Apparently he got in
Yeah.
through a special invite or something. But I guess that comes to show that it's just not a a big priority or much of like a reality that a lot of our filmmakers over here see.
We know that's a feeling people have, and that's why we do things like this to say that is
Yes.
not true. Like I know, and I know, like the feelings people have in the industry and people historically look at as like, well, you haven't played a lot. Those are real. Those are real things. But like, you know, we want to let you know, like, no, you should submit, and we want to consider your work. You know, and I will say, like, I'm Indian American, and I'll say like my experience too with and I've worked with Indian film festivals, and I know it's a strange thing, I think, where I think for Indian films, for example, they do look more towards Europe, and Indian independent cinema, I think, look more towards Europe instead of the United States. But it kind of drives me crazy as someone who works in that space, is that there's an audience for those films here that I don't know are in Europe in the same way, you know, like, and I think that, like, I think it is my impression. I mean, maybe Ania and Stephanie have to agree on this, like Ania especially, but like like I think I think there's a sense that because European festivals are inherently international a lot of times, that they are more open to international work, where United States and North America is not. And but I think it's kind of, I think it is, I think that impression exists because of the reality of what's happening in the films they play. But I think that there are audiences in North America, in America, that want to watch these films, and we as programmers want to see them and consider them. But there is something happening between that disconnect between the filmmakers and the idea that, well, this is not a place for me, or will play my stuff, and I just feel like that that isn't true. Like I like, and I would want to say that, but I understand, like, this is the reality that people feel, and it's hard to break. And we talk about this, and you know, the only way it could change is that if we are actually considering your all's work, you know, like, and I think that's, I'm speaking from the Indian American side. It's like I get that, like, I think that sometimes like Cannes, and especially in terms of a larger festival like Cannes and Toronto, are seen as like more open, but we want to play films like that. We have played Indian films, I would say, for example, and I worked for like an Indian independent cinema festival in Los Angeles, and we have an audience that would come all the time to watch these films, but they're not, you know, I think it's things like this that will help, like, try to get it on your radar, because we can't play the stuff that you aren't submitting, you know, like, and it's like, and if people aren't submitting anything, that we don't have the opportunity to show it.
I risk in submitting my film to Sundance, and I messaged Stephanie actually, privately, because they do watch the films, and it's the best rejection letter I got. because they usually, because in festivals they usually send generic rejection letters, and it's the first time that I got a very personal rejection letter from Stefan, telling me how they were touched by my film, putting specific scenes from the film. So I knew that they watched the film in whole, and even though it's a rejection, it's like, oh my God, it's my almost Sundance story. So I guess it's all a risk for all of us. If you want your film to be in a festival, then you just submit. I mean, who knows? You might get a personal rejection letter too. So no, I'm so thankful for that, because I've been receiving so many rejection letters, and it's the first time I got a very, very personal rejection letter. So for that, I'm thankful.
It is hard. I mean, we really love your films, and it's just what happens when you have so few slots and a lot of competition, that we just can't take them all. But you know, we grow attached. And, you know, just because you don't get in to Sundance does not mean your film is not great. You know, it's just, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that go into our programming. And so we really don't want any filmmaker to ever feel like this is the end all, you know. And I know it's hard. I've been on the other side of that too, but you know, take it seriously.
And just to add to that, you know, and to address the fees question, or not question, statement, more like from the chat, it's, we understand these are not small fees, and we also understand that when you're applying to a number of different festivals, it's a lot of money they will be spending on this. But look, the difference between us and maybe not every festival is doing it that way, but honestly, every single submission that goes to the festival is being watched by, I would say, at least 2 people, if not more. And that costs money. And it's just, you know, because we want to do it properly, and we have to have screeners helping us out. And we want to pay those people. We don't want them to be doing this for free, because that will also affect the way they view our films. I'm sorry, it's true. And it's one of those things. It's just like, well, in my opinion, you shouldn't feel like there's no point in submitting for whatever reason you might be thinking that. And now that you've met us, you guys submit and then send us a note. Honestly, send us an email saying we've submitted. Yes, this is my film. Because we so need that, because otherwise, look, we got, I don't know, how many thousand were there? Like, just docs?
Well, I think there was one thing, like, I think last year was 1,200 international documentaries. And features. And 12, and we only have 12 slots, like we said. And just to give a contrast, we have 16 slots in the US competition, and we have 800 feature docs. It's just like, and it's actually the international documentary competition for us is more competitive than the US, because there's just more people than outside the US in films.
Those rejections that you might be getting sometimes, those are really heartfelt. Like, this takes forever to also write, because I didn't realize how depressing it was going to be for us too, and that just trying to, because we love those films, we really do, and then we fight for them in those rooms sometimes with our colleagues. Like, you know, we have those discussions for hours, and then we also understand that this is a big deal. It's not like we're doing it lightly. We really aren't. But I'm not trying to defend us. I don't actually think it makes any difference, because you guys will still get a rejection sometimes from us. Not everyone will get in, and I understand it's annoying. But don't ever feel like there's no point in applying. And I mean it. Like, you have no idea. Someone might be, like, Stephanie's just amazingly patient with some of the films I sometimes wouldn't have the patience for. So when I know something is not for me, she will watch it instead of me. I'll pass it on, and I'll say, look, I think this is great. It's not for me. And she will do the same thing with you know, Sudeep, with something that they feel like I might respond to more. So it's also just part of that work, you know, that we do, that I think is really, I'd love for you to know this, that we really do take it seriously.
We are here now in this room trying to form a relationship. It's not to put the films on top of the pile, of course, but obviously it's to create and actually unpack the perception that Sundance is hard to reach. That's not true at all. Before I end with my wrap-up spiel, it would be nice to hear your parting thoughts to the filmmakers.
I think there's this idea that these festivals, like, you know, that these festivals are being programmed or picked, films are picked by like algorithms or machines, or like people who don't care about what's happening. And like and you're not, or you don't only care about important people or stuff like that. And I think that like it's a very human process, I think. And I think that, like, you know, we want to hear from you, and that you submitted your film, and like, you know, we just ask, like, just like anything else, like, we might not respond right away, but doesn't mean that we're not like reading what you're saying, and we're not thinking about it. And like, because we're getting a lot of, especially now, we're getting a lot of emails. I'm speaking out of a little sense of guilt that I have emails to respond to, but like, you know, that we care about you and your film, and we're people that are watching them, you know. And I think that we want to, you know, we like Ania was saying, like, we're not necessarily, it doesn't mean that we're always going to play every, you know, you might look at our selections and wonder, like, why are they doing that or something like that. But like, you know, we want to let you know that you can talk to us and communicate with us, and we want to and we care about that, and we care about your films, and we're not like just a unthinking monolith. We are actually responding to the world and everything that's happening.
I hope you will know that after this, you'll feel a little bit more, I don't know, more inclined to reach out to us and more inclined to submit. And again, it's not like we don't understand that this is not a cheap festival to submit to. We get that. We really do. We have our reasons. You might not agree with them, and I respect that a lot. And in terms of other festivals, someone asked about other festivals that might be worth submitting to. Honestly, it all depends on your festival. There's so many North American festivals that we think are great. Like Hot Docs is amazing, but we also have True Falls, and there are festivals that are not doc specific. They're really incredible too, like Tribeca and South by, and so it just depends on what really is good for your film, and maybe you will know sometimes more about different communities around the States that would make sense for your film more than others. So just do your research is always the thing I say. Like, don't submit to festivals you feel like wouldn't have an interest in your film in the first place. If you can kind of look through the program and see what type of films they like.
Stephanie, before you say your parting words, can you please answer what are the rules about world premiere requirement?
It just needs to be at least an international premiere for us. So like, if your film plays in its home country, so if it played in the Philippines, that's okay. It just can't play outside of the Philippines. We want to see your films, and I hope your plans for your films like fits with Sundance, and we can just see more of your work. And then I hope you also feel encouraged to attend this for this season, especially with the virtual presence that we'll have, and find ways to engage that way too.
It was really great to have you guys. Thank you for the candor. Thank you for being so open. I have one last thing before we say our goodbyes. I have one question for everyone in this session. Is everybody familiar with the chat function in the Zoom? I hope yes. If not, please look for it and click. Because my next real question is, please describe in one sentence or one word, what is your biggest takeaway from today's session? As we'd also like to learn from everybody. I would also like to remind you that our program opens on October 2 and runs until November 5. Just go to theangdocu.com/watch now. Right now, the cinema is closed. So just open your virtual cinemas on that site on October 2. Ready, everyone? And go.
You're thinking, oh, Sundance is approachable. I like that. Don't be afraid of Sundance.
Fantastic.
Fantastic, yeah.
So, is everyone in? I think so. That was actually fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Thank you.
So I'm Monster Jimenez for the Ang Docu on behalf of my co-directors, Cara, Baby Ruth, and Jewel. If you know them, they're just here. Maraming salamat. It's a great way to kick off the weekend, seeing everybody. Thanks for joining our industry session, Sundance Filmmaking in the time of COVID. Do not be afraid of Sundance. Keep streaming on the Ang Docu, the home of Philippine documentaries. Hope to see you in the cinemas. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sudeep, Ania, and Stephanie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Good evening to you.
Setting sun, and you will meet the rainbow's twin. Exploitation since the 1960s. All the villagers were forced to flee into the mountains.
Please raise your hand. Any of your family were killed when you were forced to live here?
Shot dead.
Dili sa ingon na nga namatay siya, namatay po ang iyang nasugdan.
Pilipinas ang isa sa may pinakamaraming bilang ng mga ibon na nanganganib mawala ng tuluyan.
Hindi lang basta-basta makakausap din yun eh. Kuwang ko ito eh.
Daghang naghiskot pa sa mga iro nga di mahunong og uwang. Pila ka semana human ang bagyo. Makakita pa ka ang mga iro sa mga walang nahimutang nga kag?